What's up, guys? It's Alec Torelli. Welcome back to an episode of The Hand of the Day.
Hand of the Day.
This one comes from a recent session I played on Live at the Bike, a 25-50 game. Played a marathon, like 12-hour session, and this comes up at the close to the end of the session. I open with ace queen under the gun, 25-50 blinds. I make it 150. I get called in a few spots. So Josh calls to my left, Israeli Ron calls to his left, and Harry calls in the small blind. So we go four ways to the flop. Flop comes queen 4-3 rainbow. A great flop for me. Stack sizes are pretty shallow. I guess Israeli Ron's a little deep, Josh. But against Harry, I have a great hand. And even against these other guys, they're calling with a lot of hands. Pre-flop, and this hand pretty much smashes the flop for me. The only thing I really have to be worried about is something like 4-3 suited, which there's only two combos of that, or sets of fours or sets of threes. So it's very likely I have the best hand. And above and beyond that, there's a lot of hands that I could get value from. So any queen 10 suited, queen jack, queen king, those hands are all hands I get value from, arguably even three streets of value. So I definitely want to come out betting here. And when Harry checks, I think I have a very clear bet. The pot's like 750 or something like that, and 700. So I have a very clear bet here. I'm going to be bluffing some of the time. Like, to be fair, I might be betting with something like 5-6 suited, 5-7 suited with backdoors. Maybe like ace deuce, ace 5 suited is going to be some of the bluffs I might have on a flop like this. But the value hands I'm going to have are also very few as well. I'm going to have some strong queens and kings and aces. But that being said, I raised under the gun. I'm c-betting into four people. So I'm not going to have a ton of hands to begin with when I bet this flop, right? So betting ace queen is totally reasonable. This is definitely one of the better hands I'm going to have, one of the best hands I could have, and I'm definitely going to be wanting to get value from other players with worse hands. So I go ahead and bet 500, which is a decent sized bet on the bigger side, but that's fine. I'm representing strong hands and I'm betting into four people. Definitely makes sense to bet a bigger size. Now things get a little bit interesting. Josh calls immediately to my left, and Israeli Ron calls as well. But you can see here Israeli Ron sort of like is debating what to do. And I might have got an interesting read here in this spot. I sort of felt like he was debating whether or not to raise. And I was trying to make sense of what that might mean. It was clear he was debating in this spot. He told me later it was debating between calling, maybe raising and folding. But it was clear that he was a little bit hesitant. So I was trying to make sense of what his range might be for being hesitant in this spot. If he had something like a really strong queen, I think it's a very clear call here. Raising is just too light because he's just only going to get it in against better hands. He's going to isolate better hands like sets and strong queens and overpairs. And at the same time, folding is just not really an option. If he has something like king queen, it's just so likely to be the best hand that he can't fold. So I pretty much eliminated those hands that he can have, just because it doesn't make sense for him to have such a dilemma like he showed on the turn here. So the hands that I thought he might have are something like sets, which debates whether or not to raise or call. Or he could have something like what he has, like ace 5 suited, ace deuce suited, or maybe something like 5-6. Even though I think 5-6 is a very clear call, I think Ron's always going to call here with 5-6. That's a pretty reasonable option because you don't want to bluff raise with 5-6, then get 3-bet or have someone jam, and then fold out your equity when you have so much equity. But with something like ace 5, it makes a little bit more sense to bluff with something like that. So I really didn't think there was that many hands that he could have here. And it did make me a little bit concerned that he could have something like a set just because he was thinking so much. So that plays a little bit into my decision coming into this hand later. But then it gets folded to Harry, who immediately jams. And this is where things get interesting. I'm supposed to have a very clear call. From a math standpoint, I mean, this is a very clear call, I think. I have, let's see, it's 3,000 more to me. The pot's 5,700. And I'm pretty sure I had Josh beat based on how he was looking, how he was acting in this spot, the way he called on the flop. I'm pretty sure that Josh doesn't have it here. Israeli Ron, there's definitely a chance he could have been trapping me, and he just could bury us both with a set of fours or threes. That's definitely possible. But there's also a chance he has weaker hands that he's going to fold. But if just from a range standpoint, most of Josh and Israeli Ron's range is behind mine, so it's very, very likely I have the best hand. I'm getting a great price, almost 2-1. And I have top pair, top kicker. I mean, what's Harry gonna do? Harry's was losing a little bit at this point. He's being very aggressive. There's a lot of history in this game if you watch the stream before this, where he could have easily been making this play with something like king queen queen jack maybe, or ace queen, which we tie as well. So there's definitely a lot of worse hands that he could shove. And so I do think from a math standpoint, you could argue that this is definitely a call. But something sort of like tweaked about this hand in real time when I was playing it, and I just felt like this wasn't a sign that Harry was light based on the way he shoved, the speed he shoved, and just how the situation actually went down. It's sort of hard to put my finger on exactly what made alarm bells go off in my head that made me think, you know what, maybe this hand isn't right and maybe something's wrong here. Maybe he actually has a really strong hand. Maybe he doesn't have a hand like queen jack and he's just like ripping it in here. But in fact, I thought he had a really, really strong hand. So in this spot, I basically thought that he was doing this for value and he wanted to get called. That was my read on the situation. And so that changes the types of hands that he can have. So if I don't have a read on someone, or I'm just playing against a computer, I'm just going to go off of how my range matches up against their range, what the math says, what the price I'm getting, what's my equity, and can I justify calling. That's the only way that I'm going to think about poker. That's how I make most of my decisions at the table. But times like these where I really feel like I get a sort of feeling that something isn't right, or that my opponent has a different type of intention, I'm going to adjust the range that I give them based on how I feel about the situation. So if I think my opponent's bluffing, like maybe you saw in the last video against Doug Polk, I'm going to analyze the hand from the perspective that, you know what, there's probably slightly more bluffs that they can have, less value hands, because I'm trusting that my read is right, which means that most of the time I think I'm going to be correct, right? That's something I've bet on throughout my career. It serves me very, very well, and it's something I've honed throughout the years that I think I'm good at doing. It's one of the skills that I have in poker. So in this situation, when I read my opponent as having value hands, well, then I'm going to discount some of the types of weaker hands that he could be shoving. It doesn't mean he can't have those hands, that it's theoretically impossible. It just means that given that this is what I think about his intention, I have to categorize the types of hands he can have based on what I think about the situation. So because I don't think he's bluffing, that sort of changes the range of hands that I'm actually giving him in this situation. And so my point here is to illustrate that even from a math standpoint, this hand looks less appealing to me than it would if you were just analyzing it in a vacuum, or if I was playing against a computer. Because if I'm going against all the hands he can have, I have a very clear call, as I just illustrated. He can have some bluffs, he can have some worse queens. But if I go against the types of hands that I felt like he had in this spot, against the hands he could have for value, then suddenly I don't love my hand as much. I think that he has something like sets and ace queen. King queen, I just don't think that he's going to shove into 3 other people this quickly when I come out betting into 3 other people and there's 2 people calling behind him. I think if he has something like king queen, he's going to think about it for a second, maybe give off some emotion that he's a little bit unsure about the confidence of his hand bombing it in this spot. Let's face it, if he shoves with king queen and gets called, he's pretty much always beat. It's really unlikely someone's going to call him off with queen jack. I mean, maybe someone calls with queen jack, but a lot of the times people have, sets or king queen or ace queen. That definitely comprises some of the hands that certainly I could have betting into 3 other people, as well as over pairs. So if you have something like king queen here in the small blind, probably going to shove. Maybe you're not going to just bomb it instantly and be super confident, or give off the read that I thought I got on Harry in the spot. So I guess I thought he had something like maybe ace queen for the same hand, even though I thought pre-flop, I didn't really think he had ace queen, just based on how quickly he called and how he was sort of acting nonchalant about his hand. I think if he had ace queen in this spot pre-flop, he's definitely going to think about 3-betting just to isolate the pot. He has a pretty short stack. Just take down the pot right away pre-flop. I think that's definitely a consideration. So in this spot, based on how he called pre-flop and the confidence that he had going into this situation on the flop, facing all the action, I just felt like sets were pretty damn likely. I know it's pretty ambitious to fold something like ace queen here, given the price I'm getting, and I'm basically only folding correctly if he has a set. So I wanted to be pretty damn sure, and you can see me tanking here for a while in this spot, looking at Ron, looking at Josh, trying to figure out if they're likely to have something behind me. But when I added that up to the fact that Ron's range was sort of polarized in the sense that he had really strong hands or really weak hands, and Harry just shoving the way that he did, and the energy that he did, and the speed that he did, I just felt like enough of the time he's going to wind up with a set here, and I thought I could make a really truly big fold in a spot that I would pretty much never make. So anyway, I upped the fold here. I ended up being right, which is a pretty sick spot. I think this is one of the best folds I made of the night, certainly one of the best folds I've made in a while. from math standpoint is definitely pretty tough to fold here. So I really did have to rely a lot on my intuition and my read in this spot to make a play that truly did save me thousands of dollars. So I hope you enjoyed something from this video, a little bit more of not just this hand in general, but a little bit of how I approach the game, some of my thought process that I told you I would share with you this week, and a little bit of the difference between how I sort of manage this idea of game theory that you're supposed to apply to your situations, and then balance that with the idea of exploitative play, with how I sort of read opponents and feel out situations to determine more precisely what I think their ranges are and how my hand matches up. So hope you enjoyed this. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. I'd greatly appreciate it. Share it with someone you think would enjoy it. That would be awesome as well. Subscribe to my channel. More new content coming your way. I'll see you guys next time on the Hand of the Day.